The minor league season is coming to an end, so it's time for the second minor league update here at the Nashville Sounds, taking on the Memphis Redbirds, who are going to be sending out Michael Baird against the Sounds. Start things off top half of the first inning. Greg Bird up with 2 outs. Gonna hit a ball out to right center field. Center fielder gives it a dive, cannot make the play off the end of his glove, and Bird is into second base with a double. So he's in scoring position, but unfortunately Sam Travis could not drive him in as he goes down swinging on the slider. Move things on top half of the third now as Julio Pablo Martinez comes to the plate, and he powers the ball to deep center field, off the wall, and Martinez has some wheels as he gets his fleet feet into third base with a triple. And then with 1 out, it would bring out Bryce Turang, the shortstop, as he's going to bloop one down the right field line in for a base knock that drives in a run, and Nashville has themselves a 1-0 lead. Wei-Che Wong was the starter for the Sounds, recently called up from Double-A Frisco, making his 8th start of the season for Nashville. And in the bottom half of the third with 1 out, it's going to be Dean with a base knock. After that, it is Godoy who comes up with a base knock of his own. So back-to-back singles for the Redbirds. After that, with 1 out, it would bring up the leadoff hitter and Max Schrock as he draws himself a walk. So it's bases juiced for the Redbirds. Brings up Jose Martinez, no, not the previous Jose Martinez on the Cardinals, a different Jose Martinez. As he goes down the left field line, that's going to drive in 2 runs and make it a 2-1 lead for the Redbirds. Wong would come out of the game, and Joe Palumbo, the lefty, comes on out of the bullpen, and he would proceed to give up a base knock right up the middle. That's going to drive in 2 runs, and the Redbirds have themselves a 4-1 lead on the Ravello 2 RBI single. After that, it's going to be Nolan Gorman chopping one up the middle. Tried to turn 2, but only get 1, so Gorman's on first with 2 outs. And Plummer hits a ball out to left center field. That's going to get down over the head of Martinez in center, and that's going to drive in Gorman all the way from first base. So it's a 5-1 lead for the Memphis Redbirds now, and they would finally get out of the inning as Palumbo gets Justin Williams to fly out to deep left field for the 3rd out of the inning. We then move on to the top half of the 4th. Greg Bird at the dish yet again. This time he's going to go down the left field line. That's up against the wall, and he's going to hustle his way into second base for his 2nd double of the day to lead off the inning. Next batter up is Sam Travis. He's going to pop one up to shallow center field, I should say, and that they thought it was going to land, so Bird tried to move up, ends up being caught at second base, so that's a double play. And it's a shame, too, because Terrin Vavra would have been able to drive him in as he proceeds to hit this one at the right center field, and that's going to be a triple for Terrin Vavra. The former Minnesota Golden Gopher scurries into third base, so he's over on third with 2 outs, brings up Apostle, who then grounds out to shortstop, and nobody scores, so it's still a 5-1 game. Move things on bottom of the 5th, and it's going to be a Ravello 2-run home run. Palumbo with a runner on second base gives up the 2-run shot. It's now a 7-1 lead for the Redbirds, and that would end up being your final score in this one, as the Nashville Sounds did not put their best effort out today as they get pounded by the St. Louis Cardinals AAA affiliate. Ravello on the post-game screen in the Nashville Sounds uni, of course, because that's literally never going to get fixed. I'm sure that'll still be there in MLB The Show 37. Now let's take a closer look at some of the guys who were on the AAA roster, the first one being Blake Swihart. He's proven at this point to pretty much just be a 4A guy. He's by far, statistically, our best bat in AAA, but he was awful in the big leagues when he gets a chance, and he's been awful throughout his career in the big leagues when he gets a chance. So I highly doubt he ends up being back for 2021. Also, a lot of these 4A mid to late 20s guys in the organization that we have currently probably won't be back for 21. They're either going to be replaced by different mid to late 20s guys, or just other guys who are available in free agency, or just AA guys will replace AAA guys, and you know how it goes. But a lot of these guys probably won't end up being back, and it's just more the guys who I feel like have proven that they should be able to stay around. A good example of that would be Greg Bird, who was bad in the big leagues, didn't really do much in AAA. I doubt I keep both him and Sam Travis, because Bird being a lefty almost certainly will be gone since we already have Ronald Guzman, and we don't really need another lefty first baseman. Or lefty bat first baseman, I should say. And Sam Travis is also younger. He's the same potential as Bird, and he can play more positions than him, and he's a right-handed bat, so he pairs well with Ronald Guzman if we ever want to deploy that platoon again, even though Guzman did, he has handled himself pretty decently against left-handed pitching. Terran Vavra is the guy who, his numbers were not amazing in AAA, but he's one of those classic C-potential players who could very well end up being a solid player at some point for us. His fielding ratings are probably more suited to be a second baseman, but his bat could definitely, could absolutely play in the big leagues at some point throughout this series. Julio Pablo Martinez, I'm not going to go over too much of him because he's one of those guys in the organization who will probably get a prospect profile at some point next season. Sherton Apostle is a guy who I'm not sure if he's going to get a prospect profile, but he wasn't really all that impressive in AAA either, so there's not really too much to talk about him anyways. Anderson Tejada is a player who I thought might get a prospect profile at some point, but he's not really too high on my list of guys who I'm considering to be a big contributor to our team. He had an awful year in AAA offensively. He's already on the 40-man roster. He's a good defensive shortstop. He's decently fast. He'll probably swipe a few bags, but I highly doubt he is ever going to be a good bat. And for those of you who do not know how I usually run things, I tend to prefer a player's bat over their fielding ratings. If someone has a 99 fielding, but like they can't hit at all, I'm going to choose the guy with a 70 contact power rating with like a 50 fielding over that guy every single time. And that leads us into Jose Trevino, who is a defensive catcher. And one of my main gameplay complaints about the show is that catching ratings just don't matter at all. I never even noticed a difference between like a 60 blocking rating or a 90 blocking rating. It just seems like they block what they block in the game, and if it's a curveball that's in the dirt that's too far away, they don't block it. Like, it's not like somebody's 90 blocking rating helps them block more pitches or something. At least I don't notice anything like that. It seems to me that the only defensive rating that matters for catchers is arm strength. And there's also no framing rating either, which is obviously a huge thing in modern-day baseball. That's why guys like Mitch Garver are huge gets in baseball, because he's very good at framing pitches. The Twins do that thing where they have the catchers on one knee, and they always have the glove pretty much in the dirt to start on low pitches, rather than being like, here, throw here, and then if you miss that spot, the umpire tends to not call it, whereas if your glove is in the dirt and then you raise it up to the bottom of the zone, that looks better than... It's like framing. It's just like a way to frame better. I'm not going to pretend like I'm some catching guru. I'm not. That's just what I've seen a lot of talk about in the over on Twitter and whatnot. But anyways, not having a framing rating, not having defensive catching ratings matter makes it literally pointless to have a catcher who can't hit at least a little bit. So in real life, teams tend to prefer to have catchers who suck at hitting just because they're better catchers at framing or controlling their pitching staff. None of that shit matters at all in MLB The Show, so I'm not going to pretend like it does. I prefer offensive catchers. That's just how it's always going to be until MLB The Show changes that, which is probably going to be never. And now if we move on to the pitching side of things in AAA, we've got Austin Biebens-Dirks. He had a good year in AAA, 34 years old, deep potential. I mean, it goes without saying, he's not going to be back next season. Taylor Hearn is one of these pitchers who his numbers weren't amazing. He's a mid-60 overall, C potential. He's already going to be 26 next year. Now, I know I'm the guy who's not afraid to keep people in the organization until they're like 30, and then have them be like a 29, 30-year-old rookie. But I mean, I tend to do that for players who like put up really good numbers in the minor leagues, or they have like one really good thing about them. Taylor Hearn's just a guy where if you look at his ratings, there's literally nothing special about him. There's going to be 47 different pitchers exactly like him in free agency during the offseason. And there'll be plenty of guys within those 47 who have more standout ratings than him. Like, there's going to be a guy who throws 99, or there's going to be a guy with a wipeout slider or something like that. Taylor Hearn has none of those standout things, so he's just probably not going to be back next season. Joe Palumbo had an okay year in AAA. He is the Rangers' number 9 prospect, according to MLB.com. It says he could probably end up being a mid-rotation starter. I do not think that would be his role with us if he ends up making the big leagues, probably more of like a 5th starter at best, but he could be a decent guy to have in the bullpen as well, and he's already on the 40-man, so he is going to be sticking around for at least one more season. Ariel Jurado, I'm assuming is how you pronounce that, Jurado. I doubt it's Jurado, it's probably Jurado. Decent numbers in 2020, doesn't throw too hard. His thing is that he does not walk people, solid walk per 9 in control ratings, but with that being said, there's nothing too special about him. There's already plenty of guys in the organization who are better than him. His walk ratings are not like so incredibly good that they're like stand out, so I doubt he's back for 2021. We know Hans Kraus, he absolutely dominated Double-A, finished the year in Triple-A. Numbers aren't too shabby in Triple-A. He's going to start 2021 in Triple-A, but he could very well end up being in the big league rotation at some point throughout that season. Colin Wiles, something like that, had a good year in Triple-A. Another one of those mid-20s C potential guys. Once again, nothing stands out about him. Doesn't throw hard, doesn't have wipeout stuff, doesn't have, like, insanely good numbers, isn't extremely accurate. Doubt he's back because there's going to be a billion guys just like him in free agency who all have more standout features than him. And also, we can't have, like, we can't have an organization of 35 AAA pitchers, essentially. We need to have spots open for our guys who need playing time to develop. We need to have spots open for guys who I wouldn't mind calling up to the big leagues. We can't just have an organization filled with guys like him who are just there to be like, you know, they're okay, I guess. Then there's Luis Garcia, who pitched well this year in both, in the big leagues he had a bit too many walks, but decent ERA, but always ERA is pretty misleading with relievers. He pitched well enough to the point where he upgraded himself from a D to a C potential, but he is still a 34-year-old pitcher. Next year he'll be 34, and there's plenty of other pitchers I'd rather have in the bullpen than him, so he probably is not going to be back next season. Wei-Che Wong, how you ever say his name, not a great ERA, decent FIP. He was very good in Double-A. He'll be 27 next year, might be back, we'll have to see. He'll probably be one of those guys who wants like a $500,000 deal and will just immediately be added to the 40-man the second I re-sign him. So I don't really want him on the 40-man, so I doubt I bring him back. And then there's Jacob Lemoyne, who was very good in both Double-A and Triple-A this year. He goes against all this mid-20s slander that I've been preaching this whole episode. He'll be 27 next season, but he's a B potential, and he could end up being a decent relief option for us. He goes against everything that I've been saying because he's mid-20s. Everything is pretty average, but he's a B potential, and for a reliever, I don't mind if a guy's going to be that average, and plus, relievers this year are all rated pretty badly, so someone like Lemoyne could end up being a pretty decent performer for us. Now we move on to the Double-A team, the Frisco Rough Riders here at Wagon Man Stadium, playing host to the Northwest Arkansas Naturals of the Royals organization. Cole Winn on the hill for the Rough Riders, making his 28th start of the season, and in the top half of the first inning, things will not start off too well for him, as after getting in the first two batters out, it would be Michael Gigliotti hitting a base hit into right field, and then proceeding to swipe second base to get himself into scoring position. After that, Travis Jones would proceed to draw himself a walk, so then runners on first and second, full count to Nick Dini, also draws a walk. After that, it brings up Angelo Castellanos, with the bases juiced, 3-1 count. He's going out to right center field. That's going to bloop in for a base knock, and he's going to stretch it over to second base. And that drives in 2, so the Naturals have themselves a 2-0 lead here in the top of the first, and they would not be done there, as then Merrill comes to the plate and proceeds to drive in 2 more. He would be gunned down at second, trying to stretch it into a double, though, so a 4-0 lead for the Naturals as Chance Adams came out to be their starting pitcher. And we'll start things off with the bats for the Rough Riders in the bottom of the 4th inning, where Steele Walker, the former Oklahoma Sooner, came up. Powers went out to left center field. That's going to be an easy 2-bagger as he continues his tear of the Texas League this season. Then Josh Jung comes to plate, and he proceeds to hit one out to deep right field. Walker is going to try to tag up and advance, but the relay throw is going to get him at third base, as nobody ends up scoring in that inning. So still 4-0. On to the bottom of the 5th now. Jordan Brewer, recently acquired in the Robinson Chirinos trade, draws a walk, and then Bubba Thompson comes up, and he's going to hit one off the bottom of the wall in left field, over the diving glove of the left fielder, and Brewer's going to score all the way from first base. It's an RBI double for Bubba Thompson. Makes it a 4-1 game, brings up Eric Jenkins. He's going to slap one up the middle, and that's going to drive in Thompson from second base, so the lead is cut in half to 4-2 now. Then that would bring up Maximo Acosta as Jenkins proceeds to swipe second base, get himself into scoring position using that speed of his. Acosta then draws a walk, so it's first and second with one out for Basabe, and he proceeds to chop one over to third base. That's an around-the-horn double play to get out of the jam for the Naturals, but it's a 4-2 game now. Ian Gabot then comes on in the top half of the 8th for the Rough Riders in a 4-2 ball game, and a swing on a pitch so far inside that nobody has any business hitting that is end up hitting into fair territory, and the right fielder cannot make a play on it, and it's going to end up being a double for Brewer Hicklin. Then it brings up Mejia, hits a ground ball up the middle. Acosta could not handle it, so all of a sudden it's runners on the corners with nobody out, but Gabot clutches up, gets a 3-6-3 double play. A runner from third does not come in. That's 2 down now with a runner on third, and he proceed to blow a fastball by Gigliotti, and it's a still 4-2 ball game. Tyler Zuber came on in the bottom half of the 8th for the Naturals, and he would be facing Maximo Acosta. Gets a hanging curveball, but he grounds at the shortstop. Their shortstop has some trouble with it, and Acosta hustles it out for an infield hit, or I believe it was credited with an error, but he's on first base, and Steele Walker absolutely pulverizes a ball way over the right field fence. It continues to tear up the Texas League. A 2-run shot ties the game at 4 here in the 8th inning as Zuber blows the Naturals' lead. Cole Reagans then came on in the top of the 13th as that tie lasted all the way to the top of the 13th as Reagans came on through one single pitch. And it was hit so far that not a single outfielder even attempted to move. Way out of here, off the bat, Rivera gives them a 5-4 lead. Reagans then proceeds to get out of the inning, and the Naturals bring on a reliever named Blewett. So is he going to blow it? We'll see. Davis Wenzel pinch hitting to lead off the inning. 1-0 count to him. The former Baylor Bear is going to launch one out to left field. That one's going to get over the head of the left fielder off the bottom of the wall. 2-bagger to lead off the inning for Wenzel. Eli White then came on to pinch run for him. They get some extra speed out there. So runner on second, nobody out. Steele Walker powers one deep center field. Not going to be deep enough, though, as it's caught right at the track. White tags up. He's over on third with 1 out. Next batter up would be Josh Jung. He proceeds to not be able to pull the trigger on that down and away fastball. That's strike 2, and then Sam Huff is jammed. He knows it, throws the bat down, pop-up right to the first baseman as the Northwest Arkansas Naturals win this game over the Frisco Rough Riders in 13 innings by a score of 5-4. Emmanuel Rivera had that blast to give them the lead in the 13th. Off of Cole Reagans, who gets the loss. Randy Rosario gets the win, and Scott Blewett does not blow it. He indeed gets the save. And now let's take a closer look at the AA team. First guy up is the one who absolutely raked. He's been tearing up the season. Steele Walker absolutely lit up the AA Texas League. 30 home runs, a 926 OPS, 12 steals as well. Led the Texas League in home runs and a ton of other hitting categories. I'm not going to get too in-depth on him because he will 1000% be getting a prospect profile next season, probably pretty early on in the season as well. He really stood out as a guy that I want to be a big part of the future of this team, so Steele Walker is definitely a guy to be keeping our eye on. Bubba Thompson also had a very solid year in AA. He led the Texas League in OBP with a 3.73. He had the second highest OPS on the Rough Riders behind Steele Walker. And we just have so many guys in the organization who I want to do a prospect profile for that, like, Bubba Falls is one of those guys who's like, I mean, there's a lot of other guys in front of him, but I kind of want to give him one, so we're just not going to give him one because it'd be like 2027 by the time he gets one. And Bubba Falls could end up being a very solid contact OBP type hitter. He's probably more suited to be a corner outfielder with plus speed rather than a center fielder because he just doesn't have the reaction to be a center fielder, but he still is a very solid prospect to keep our eye on. We have a lot of good outfielders. All of them are obviously not going to be able to play in the big leagues for us. Some of them will probably end up being trade bait, but he is a guy worth keeping an eye on. Oslavis Basabe, I'm hoping I'm not butchering that first name too badly. Didn't really hit for power for us, but decent OPS through 116 ABs. Was in single A for most of the season. Injuries ended up opening a spot for him in double A. Hitting ratings are still very, very raw for him. He runs extremely well, has a good arm, has a good reaction. He can play shortstop and center field, and he's only 19 years old, so he's still a few years away from the big leagues, but he could end up being a solid player depending on how his bat develops for us. Then, of course, there's Sam Huff. We all know about Sam Huff at this point, an extremely Texas name for a guy from Arizona. Gonna end up being in the big league roster right from the get-go in 2021. Josh Jung, unfortunately, is not going to be on the big league roster right from the get-go. He still is the future. He still is our future third baseman. There's no doubt about that. It's just he's probably going to start the year in AAA. We'll either continue to roll with Brosseau at third base next year, or we'll sign like a stopgap third baseman to a one-year deal. Does not mean that we won't see Jung at all in Texas at some point in 2021, but he will not be on the opening day roster. Jordan Brewer came over in the Robinson Chirinos to Houston trade. He will be getting a prospect profile in 2021, so I'm not going to go too in-depth on him. Diasobal Arias started the year as a B potential, had such a bad year at the second base position all season long for our AA team that he regressed down to a C potential, which is definitely not something you like to see. Davis Wenzel, not a great year for him, stats-wise, at all. Still a guy I'll be keeping my eye on, though, because his hitting ratings are already to the point where they could develop into something pretty solid. So he's still a guy worth keeping an eye on, because he could just have one good year and just explode and have this insane, actual hitting ratings, and he could be a decent player for us. Maximo Acosta had an awful year at the plate for us. He will be getting a prospect profile at some point for us. Probably not 2021, but definitely at some point. Eric Jenkins is a guy who is a complete liability offensively, but he's insanely fast, very quick reactions in the outfield. He's sort of like Billy Hamilton at this point. He doesn't really have a way to get on base, though, to use his speed, because you can't steal first base. And then on the pitching side of things for AA, there is Cole Winn, another guy who at some point will be getting a prospect profile, but he did have a solid year in AA, so that is worth mentioning. Phil Bickford came over from the Brewers in the Kluber trade. Used to be viewed as one of the top prospects in baseball when he was with the Giants organization. Not so much anymore. He was drafted out of high school, 10th overall by the Blue Jays in 2013. Did not sign, instead went to Cal State Fullerton. Had a pretty solid freshman year there. Ended up transferring to Southern Nevada, the College of Southern Nevada, after having a summer in the Cape Cod League, where he was voted the best player or the best prospect in the Cape Cod League or something like that. Ended up transferring to College of Southern Nevada for his sophomore year, so he would be draft eligible. He then went 18th overall to the Giants in 2015. Ended up being a part of the trade. The Giants ended up being a part of the package the Giants sent to the Brewers for Will Smith. He's going to be 24 next season. I'm hoping that he can crack the big league rotation at some point for us. It'd be very cool if our rotation could literally just end up being some combination of Kraus, Balazovic, however you say his name, Phil Bickford, Colby Allard, and Kyle Cody. Or Cody could be swapped out for any other of the B potential prospects we have, but it could be cool if our rotation literally just ends up being the 5 of those guys. Then there's also Cole Reagans. Spent the year switching between being a starter and a reliever. He was solid as both of those for us. Could end up being a solid left-hander who strikes out a lot of hitters for us. Definitely a guy to keep around in the organization. Jordan Balazovic, Twins had him in single A all year long when we traded for him in the Mike Minor trade. Pitched 44 innings in AA for us, was very solid. He will probably be in AAA next year, and he will be getting a prospect profile in 2021 as well, probably pretty early on in the year as well. So with that being said, that is going to wrap things up here for this edition of the Texas Rangers Minor League Update. I've been your host, Jerseyborn, and I am saying, I think that Joey Gallo should start hitting in my franchise like he is with the actual Rangers in the MLB The Show Players League.